Hi, I'm Dan Lagani with Silver Solutions, the senior-focused home services company. And welcome to another edition of AgeWise. Our commitment with each episode is to make you smarter and more informed about something that you need to know as you and your loved ones grow older. Today, we've got a very meaty topic. It's helping your parents manage their personal finances so that they can live better, longer. We sat down with our guest a couple of weeks back. Her name is Cameron Huddleston. She's an author and a personal financial journalist. She's been covered extensively by the likes of U.S. News and World Report, Kiplinger's. Twitter called her one of the most influential personal financial reporters in the country. And we covered a range of topics, including the book she wrote called Mom and Dad, We Need to Talk, an essential guide to the conversations everyone needs to have with their aging parents. Cameron Huddleston, thanks so much for joining us on today's AgeWise.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, Cameron, you've had over 20 years writing about personal finances, and you've been featured in places like U.S. News and World Report. You've written for Kiplinger's, Forbes. But your book, what inspired the book and the cross into this role of both personal financial writer and child? Where did it all come from?
To be honest, my book was inspired by my own failing. I failed to have conversations with my parents about their finances before there were emergencies that prompted those conversations. I didn't talk to my dad about whether he had a will or estate planning documents before he died, because I assumed he did. He was an attorney, but he passed away at 61 in a second marriage without a will, and that was fun. It wasn't awful, but it certainly wasn't fun. And then I did not talk to my mom about her finances before she started experiencing memory loss and was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and before I had to get involved with her finances as her caregiver. And so I didn't want people to make the same mistake I did. I wanted people to realize they need to be talking to their parents about their parents' finances while they are still healthy and relatively young.
And it all makes perfect sense on paper. But the reality is that planning for the future, even if it's just for yourself, isn't the American way. And I think it's also kind of awkward when children suddenly start to play almost a parental role, if you will, with the people that brought them up. So it's an awkward place, and I understand why you and others tend to avoid those conversations. Are there some easy ways to bring it up? Do you have any suggestions on how we may be able to broach the awkward topic so that we avoid what you just described?
There are actually a variety of ways that you can make these conversations less awkward. And I want people to realize, too, that as awkward as these conversations might seem, the consequences of not having them are a lot worse. Imagine mom has had a stroke. She's in the hospital and you can't access her bank account to make sure her bills are paid because you haven't been named power of attorney. So how do you have these conversations? Because yes, that role reversal is a big issue, and that can be a key reason why your parents might be reluctant to talk. They might also be embarrassed about their finances. They might not like the idea of discussing this because it brings up issues of aging and mortality. So how do you go about it in a more natural way? Well, one thing you can do is ask about what if scenarios. What if something were to happen and I needed to make sure your bills got paid? How could I do that? I have a friend who did it and it worked so well. She asked her mom and her mom said, I never even thought of that. She went home and made a list of the bills she had to pay and how they were paid and how her daughter could pay them for her. And then that led to more conversations. You could talk about scams, because we're all targeted by scammers. Every day we get those text messages, the phone calls, the emails trying to trick us into parting with our money. So you can share recent scams that you've seen and ask your parents, have you heard about these scams? I want you to be aware of them. That can open the door to having more conversations about what they're doing to protect their finances. So there are a variety of ways to have these conversations so that they're not quite so awkward.
Yeah, some really great tips there. What are the three things that, in your view, are the must-have topics to cover? You talked about bills, you talked about a will, but what are the things that anybody that is in the middle of this right now with their mom or dad should absolutely be covering?
So you need to find out, do your parents have estate planning documents? And this doesn't just include a will or a trust that spells out who gets what when they die. And that's certainly important, because if your parents die without a will, state law will determine who gets their assets. And even if they don't have a lot, if they care about who gets those things, they need to put it in writing. And even if they don't care, guess what? Kids might care, and they're going to end up fighting in court over who gets those things. And so they need to put their final wishes in writing. But even more important than that will or trust is a power of attorney document. This lets you name someone you trust to make financial decisions and transactions for you if you can't. This document and all legal documents must be drafted while you are still mentally competent. You need to have named a healthcare power of attorney. It's also called a healthcare proxy or healthcare surrogate, someone who can make medical decisions for you if you can't. And you need an advance directive or living will that spells out what sort of end-of-life medical treatment you do or do not want. And if this is all you can find out from your parents, then that's a really good place to start. They have to have these documents in place.
One of the things that we said at the outset is you've been writing about personal finances for many years. And I know we also mentioned in the intro, you're a mom and you've got 3 children. You write about a wide range of personal financial topics. What's the biggest difference in your view between dealing with things when you have young family members versus what you need to be thinking about when you're helping someone who is in a retirement or approaching retirement? What's the biggest difference between those types of financial plans?
Well, for starters, I will say it's easier to talk to your kids about financial matters than to try to talk to your parents about their finances, because your kids are looking to you for guidance. Your parents aren't necessarily looking to you for guidance. In fact, they probably want you to stay out of their business. And so that's why you have to approach these conversations carefully. But the issue here is when you're raising a family, you're responsible for your children's well-being. And so that has to be your number one priority. Those kids are counting on you. They don't have any other source of income. They don't really have a say in what happens to them. So they have to be your priority. If you have aging parents who haven't done a good job of planning for retirement, they haven't done a good job of staying on top of their finances, having these conversations will help you find out what sort of planning they have or have not done. And it will allow you to do a couple of things. It will allow you to encourage them to take steps to be better prepared. Maybe that means helping them find a financial advisor. Maybe that means referring them to credit counseling to pay off any debt that they have. But the thing is, you don't want to jeopardize your own financial well-being to support aging parents, because if you've got kids who are counting on you and you can't support them, then you're just going to perpetuate that cycle.
Again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. And one of the reasons why I think behaviorally people tend to avoid it, because it gets us into an awkward space, which really is a common theme around aging in general. At our company, we deal with it on a regular basis. We don't like to face mortality. It's a really fascinating thing. It's going to happen to everybody. It's universal, and yet we don't like to talk about it. With that in mind, what's the single biggest mistake you'd like to see people stop making so that they're better prepared to live well into retirement?
I think the biggest mistake I would like people to stop making is to stop pretending that you're not going to die, that emergencies won't happen, that you're not going to get older. If you don't plan for this, here's the thing. I think a lot of times people think, if I'm going to write a will, if I'm going to plan for this, then it's going to happen. Like if I talk about it, it's going to happen. And that's just crazy. Talking about it, planning for it doesn't make it happen. My husband and I have gone through the estate planning process twice. We're still alive. It didn't kill us. But what we've done is we've made it easier for the people we're going to leave behind. We have a plan. We have named guardians for our children because we want to have a say in who's going to raise our kids. We want to have a say in who's going to manage our finances for us, who's going to make medical decisions for us. We want to say in who gets our property and our assets when we die, and we don't want our kids fighting over it. We don't want them to end up in a courtroom. And so think of estate planning for your future as a gift to your loved ones.
Let's shift topics a little bit. We met through a company that you're the director of education and content for called Careful. What is Careful and what's their mission?
Careful is a digital platform that was built to organize and protect aging adults' daily finances. It provides financial account monitoring, credit monitoring, identity monitoring. It also provides identity theft insurance up to $1 million. If your identity is stolen, there is a digital vault where you can store all of your important documents, such as those estate planning documents. There's a password manager that will generate strong, secure passwords and store those passwords for you so that you're not using the same 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 password on all of your accounts, which is a big mistake. And what Careful also does is it allows you, if you are the older adult who has signed up for this account monitoring service, to name trusted contacts, family members who can get view-only access to those accounts if you want to grant them that access, or they can just receive alerts when Careful spots unusual activity so that they can reach out to you and help you resolve those issues before they become bigger problems.
You've got a number of areas of expertise, as we said at the outset. You're the mom of 3, you're writing professionally, and you help parents through the aging process. Which has been the most demanding of those roles?
Oh, wow. That's a tough question. It's always difficult being a parent and being responsible for little human beings and helping them grow up to be responsible human beings. But I really do think that being a caregiver for my mom for 12 years was the biggest challenge, especially because when she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease at the age of 65, I was 35. My 2 oldest children were only 3 and 5 at the time. My 3rd child wasn't even born. And so here I was trying to help care for my mom while take care of young children and work full time. It was incredibly stressful. I hated the role reversal. I hated almost being like a parent to my parent. And I was lucky because my mother was so easygoing. She didn't push back, usually. She was willing to accept my help, but it was still difficult. And it's really difficult to watch a parent lose their memory, to watch a parent forget who you are. And it's really difficult when you end up in situations where the parent no longer recognizes you, and when there is a medical situation, and the parent thinks that doesn't know who you are and they're, resisting your efforts to help take care of them. That's just something I don't want to wish on anyone. But unfortunately, a lot of people are dealing with that and will be dealing with that as our population ages, lives longer, and more people are expected to develop dementia. And so, it's incredibly difficult having to care for a parent who has Alzheimer's disease.
Firstly, thank you for sharing. I heard a staggering figure in an earlier conversation that we had this year, that with the aging of the population, the number of people that are living longer than ever, that above the age of 80, that 1/3 of the population has some form of cognitive impairment. So you're absolutely right. It's an issue for real that is only going to get larger. Your words of wisdom are really helpful today. Cameron, before we go, tell us again the name of your book and where we can find it.
It is Mom and Dad, We Need to Talk, How to Have Essential Conversations with Your Parents About Their Finances. And I have links on my website at CameronHuddleston.com. You can also find it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, some independent booksellers sell it too, but all of those links to the various places are available at CameronHuddleston.com.
Really terrific. Cameron Huddleston, thank you for being our guest today on Age Wise and for helping us deliver on the promise of making you a little smarter about the things you'll need to know as you and your loved ones grow older. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. If you'd like back episodes, you can find them all on silversolutions.com. Just go onto the website and click on the video tab. And if you want to get every episode as it comes out, you can subscribe at Apple Podcasts. For all of us here at Silver Solutions who work hard every day to make your parents' lives and your lives better as you age, thanks so much for joining us. Stay safe and be wise.